Oh, joy that seeketh me through pain, I cannot close my heart to thee. I trace the rainbow through the rain, and feel the promise is not vain, that morn shall tearless be. O cross that liftest up my head, I dare not ask to fly from thee. I lay and does life's glory dread, and from the ground there blossoms red, like that shall endless be. Amen. Let's go to 80. Is it time? It is time.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Matthew Williams. I'm 20 years old, and this is my testimony. So I was born here in Santa Rosa, and I lived in California for the first 2 years of my life in Deer Park and Monroe. And my family decided to move. There we go. And my family decided to move to Utah, where I spent my childhood, was in the country. And I had a pretty good upbringing in the country. You know, country lifestyle, camping, shooting, chasing cows. I had a pretty good life. When I was getting schooled, my dad, he didn't take me to school for my first year of school. He homeschooled me, and I did exceptionally well for my age. I was doing third grade material at the first grade, and I had a very good one-on-one learning ability. Like, I was able to learn if someone was teaching to me one-on-one. But my parents decided to send me to school, so when I went to school, it was different. It wasn't one-on-one, it was, the whole class. And I had a hard time focusing. I'd get distracted by my classmates. And I would love to make the teachers laugh and my students laugh. I was the class clown back then, and I always found it easy to make people laugh, but never focus on one thing. So my school counselor said I had ADHD, and I just don't think that the teachers were really trying to teach me. They were just trying to medicate me. But I didn't stay at that school long. For most of my elementary year of school, I was hopping from school to school. And as I got older, my parents started having fights from rumors being spread in the church about a woman that was coming and going. My mom would later move to the city of St. George. We lived in Dameron Valley, so my parents split, and it was a two-home for right after Dylan was born. So it was a lot of moving. Most of my life has been packing all my belongings in a bag and going back and forth, home to home, which was normal to me. But my mom decided to move down to Napa, closer to family and more job opportunities. She had a job offer at Napa Christian, where she taught for a little bit. So I went down with my mom, and my brother, he stayed with my father because he wasn't old enough to go to school. So I was separate from my father and my brother for a few years. And for the first few years that I was in Napa, I was living with my grandma's house. She was letting us stay. My granny, she had too big of a heart for her own good. She let everybody stay there, all my cousins, even my cousins' friends. So it was a very crowded place. It went from, being in a two-parent home, split home, to a home filled with strangers. It was very crowded. And I was only 12 when I came to Napa. So it was my fifth grade at Napa Christian. And back at home, I wasn't surrounded by a very good influence. One of my cousins got me into staying up late, playing video games, listening to horrible music, and him just walking around me, I got high. I mean, he was smoking weed all the time, and I kind of was into what he was into. I was very young, had a very impressionable mind. And so when I went to school, none of the kids at school had that kind of lifestyle that I was living, so I felt very different from the rest of the kids. I didn't fit in. I wasn't into the same dress wear. I dressed really different from the rest of the kids. I listened to different music. And, it seemed like everybody in that school had a two-parent home, seemed happy. And I just wasn't fitting in. So I was around my cousins a lot of the time with no real watch, like no one was watching what I was intaking into my brain. My grandma, she was busy. She was working all the time. My mom, she was busy in school. So no one was really watching what I was really listening to, or what I was watching, or what I was hearing, or what I was doing. And my mother being busy all the time, I strayed from obedience, and I started becoming what every parent's worst nightmare is, a teenager. Back at home, I would always fight with my mom. I don't want to do my homework, and I'd start being rebellious. I would start doing what I wanted to do. Truth of the matter is I had no discipline living at my grandma's with my mom. And I continued to do what I wanted to do. A few years later, my dad moved down to Napa with my brother. My brother, he just started kindergarten, preschool. And he got a house, and we were back to going back and forth from home to home. And it wasn't much longer until my dad said, we're gonna move in together with Percy, who became my stepmom. And at first I was excited because I was friends with her girls for most of my childhood. But then it became very bitter, very sour. There was a lot of fighting in that home, and I hated being at my dad's house because of all the fighting. So I'd always run to my mom's, where I could do whatever I want, stay up as late as I want, and really that was the pathway to my own destruction. When I became a real teenager around 16, I was very determined to go into the military because of what I would see on the internet. I was given a phone at a young age. I was given a phone at like 15. I mean, that's the worst thing you can do, is give a teenage boy a phone that has access to the internet with no supervision. pornography, violence, I mean, you name it, it's on there. And I was in it, and I had no self-control. But what I would see on the internet with the military, I fell in love with. I wanted to be in the military so bad, and I was determined to go in. I told myself, I'm never gonna do a drug in my life. Until I was in a car that was hotboxed, and now I get the dare metaphor. You never try it once. Well, I mean, I didn't even try it. I was just hotboxed in a car, and I said, man, I like this. I like being high. And I became the one to be the peer pressurer, because I went out and seeked it for myself, and I would get other people into it. At 16 in Napa Christian, I wasn't really friends with a lot of kids in school, so I made friends outside of school who weren't Christian. And I was usually into skateboarding, so I'd hang around the skate park, and I'd hang around people who were my age, who related to me. I was going through the same struggles as me, and I thought that that kind of character was a lot more real than the people that I back in Napa Christian. I said, you know, these people know what struggle is like, and, you know, there's no, you know, this person understands what I'm going through. So I made a lot of bad friends that got me into a lot of bad stuff. I became a user, then a dealer. I started selling drugs, and just running around town late at night. Mind you, I'm still living with my mom, so I'm sneaking out late and going to San Francisco, Sonoma, all over Napa, just spray painting and smoking and just doing rebellious things. Then one night, when I was with my dad, we would constantly get kicked out of Percy's house because she would kick us out. But one night, we got a knock on the door after Percy grabbed her kids and left from the police, giving us 45 minutes to pack all of our stuff and leave. And that was sort of the end with living with Percy and her family, was when the cops kicked us out. So my dad dropped us off at my mom's, and he went to go live with my granny just until he could find some place to go. And he knew my life was a mess. And so he offered me to stay with him so that I can learn discipline. And I knew I needed discipline, but I didn't have any respect for my dad. But I knew I needed it, so I went and I lived with him for a little bit. I was still doing the same stuff, getting high, but one night I tried sneaking out, and he caught me. But he wouldn't let me go out. With my mom, I could just go because she couldn't stop me, but my dad, he's bigger, and he could stop me. And I got very angry. I was yelling at my dad, and I even shoved him, packed all my stuff, and I left, and I moved back in with my mom's, where there was free reign, pretty much. I kept living my rebellious life. And at 17, I got arrested for stabbing someone in the arm. And news about that went everywhere. And, you know, it still haunts me to this day, that event. I'm sure you guys know about that story. But when I got out of juvie, and when I went back to Napa High, I'm skipping a lot of my story, but I got kicked out of Napa Christian for being on drugs. And I transferred over to Napa High. And in Napa High, there was a lot more kids, and there's a completely different perception on, kids who went to jail and went back to school. They were looked at as cool. And I grew a reputation of being the bad kid. And I got a lot of pride. I got proud in that title of being the bad kid. Driving around in a sporty car, selling drugs, spray painting. And the rebellious lifestyle, I loved that. I lived that. But I still had my ambitions to going into the military. So once I got arrested, I had to stop smoking pot. And instead, I went to drinking alcohol. And my Marine buddies, because I was going into the Marines, I made a group of friends who were going into the Marines with me. They were going into infantry. And they were like, this is the kind of stuff that we do at Pendleton, the bases we drink. So I started drinking with them. And I got really deep into drinking. And worst thing about it is I was drinking and driving. And going to different parties and just living that party lifestyle, telling everybody, hi, I'm going into the Marines, I'm so cool. Really, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But really, I was just acting a fool, and I'm embarrassed of it. Then I got arrested for drinking and driving. Who would have thought? When I got arrested for drinking and driving, not only did I go back to the Marine station, they told me, you're too much trouble for us. We're going to have to discharge you. I lost my car. I lost my job. I was put on scram so I couldn't drink. I lost my drinking buddies. How shallow of a friendship have I realized. These people were only around me because I was fun to be with when I was drunk. The girl that I was dating at the time, I was no longer fun to be with, so she went out and cheated with another guy because, that's what you get, living that kind of lifestyle. There's a bunch of shallow people that really don't care about you. And, I thought, oh, these people really do care about me, but they don't. And it's a very cutthroat, very shallow lifestyle, and all I found out of that was vanity. I wish I had discipline when I was growing up. A lot of teenagers don't like to admit this, and a lot of teenagers don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. But out in the real world, they're making life-changing decisions, switching genders. It's crazy to me. And to think that we don't have parents who are disciplining their children on what they should be doing or what they should know. I wish I had that discipline when I was a child. But I didn't have that. And now I'm relearning that. Now that I'm living with my dad, I have been given the opportunity to relive my story. God has pulled me out of the world and has given me a new start. All the charges from my criminal history have been dropped, except for the DUI. I was given a new start. No longer a criminal, I gave that up. No longer a Marine, I gave that up. I realized that all my dreams was not what God wanted me to be. He wanted me to be here. And this testimony goes out to my brother. It's much better to obey than it is to sacrifice.